After sending her brother and sister outside, she asks what Dekilling wanted. Dekilling was more concerned with pleasing Josephine since he knew she was listening to him from behind the door. He was sure that Josephine had covered the whole room with wiretaps, even though she was putting up an act, laughing as she went out. He knew that there would be no way she would leave that easily, but since Josephine didn't know that Dekilling already knew about her, it gave him an opportunity. If he could make Josephine believe that Dekilling truly loved her precious little sister, he might be able to avoid death. Dekilling starts to execute his plans. He says to Julie that he was being honest. Julie, of course, didn't believe him. He tells her that he can't dissolve the engagement as he wishes, as things have progressed too far with both families. Julie asks what dirty method Dekilling was planning to use to torment her this time. She reminds him that he used his connections to force the engagement himself. She reminds him how he promised to compensate the elders in her family. He tries to reason with her, but Julie snaps. She says that every time she touches a sword, her elders say, fighting is dangerous. She says that because of him, she was forced to stop pursuing the imperial order, and his brazen suggestion of her taking the mantle of captain of the Knights Order supervised by the Eucaline family had spread all kinds of rumors about her. She says that she would never trust him any longer after all this. Dekilling stays quiet. Woojin knows that everything Dekilling did before Woojin possessed him was unforgivable. There was no wonder she hated Dekilling so much. Dekilling promises not to do it anymore. She immediately says that she wouldn't fall for it. He tells her that he understands that he has been tying her down, that he is aware of his wrongdoings. Julie is quite surprised. Dekilling says that he wasn't alone. He says that even her brother and elder sister have both gone too far. She tries to defend her siblings, but he tells her that if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have any reason to oppose dissolving their engagement. He asks if that whole thing was solely for the family's reputation, making sure Josephine hears him. He tells her that he knows she has to leave her family in order to manifest her dream of becoming a defender, and her overprotective siblings wouldn't want that. He tells her that he doesn't have either honesty or loyalty. She asks what he means, and he explains that he meant to say that he is someone with the opposite human qualities than what she strives for and that he isn't suitable for her. Then he offers one thing he can do for her, to continue their engagement and never marry her, so that she could use his name to shield herself as long as she wanted, until her dreams came true. She asks what his motives were for doing all this for her. He assures her that he wasn't expecting something in return, but says that if he were to hope for something, it would be for her to show him her smile at least once a month. He says that's all he wants. Julie goes from speechless to flustered real quick. Even Josephine is taken aback. Woojin thinks that he had to say some weird stuff, but it would be nothing when compared to being alive a while longer. Julie starts muttering something under her breath, and she looked absolutely adorable in his eyes. He couldn't help but acknowledge that the love Dekilling held for her might have become his as well. Julie clears her voice and says that she would never fall for his schemes, and Dekilling laughs. She panics even more seeing him laugh. Josephine wonders if Dekilling's feelings for her sister were real and decides not to make a move. 3 days later, it was the day of the death anniversary marked on the calendar. He goes to the cemetery. Strange emotions arose within him simply because of the atmosphere. His heart had melted into this place long before he had possessed Dekilling. This place bore his memories, not Dekilling, but Woojin's memories. His then-girlfriend told him that she was going to put an Easter egg in the game out of nowhere late one night. She said that she wanted to add a bit to Dekilling's background since he was a miniboss in the game. Woojin says that it will be a pointless increase in the workload. After all, they were already doing full night shifts. She says that it was pretty important to add, and that they have to put their hearts into the game. Woojin gives up on convincing her and tells her to do as she wishes, as it seemed like she wasn't asking for his opinion to begin with. She assures him that it was a good idea and that it won't be pointless. She reveals that Dekilling has a bereaved fiancé. He wondered if she had left it as an Easter egg to make herself laugh so brightly when talking about it. When he looks at one of the tombstones, he wonders if he should call it brilliant, as she did, or just call it cruel, as he felt. It was his ex's name engraved on the tombstone, and a note engraved below thanking him. He wonders why she did this, why she modeled Dekilling after him, named his bereaved fiancé after herself, and why she thanked him. He touches the tomb, and tears come out of his eyes while he tries to think about her reasons for doing this. It's as if he could hear her whispering voice. Memories of those days in the past come forth endlessly as long as he looked at the tomb, like how she used to praise his drawings with a smile, how she gave him a coat when he was shivering in the winter cold. The way she held his hand while saying that she loved him, the way she lifted his mood when he was tired, and the 7 years they spent together with her always by his side. While he was crying, someone notices him. With an angered expression, he calls Dekilling a filthy mage. After a while, Dekilling calms down and walks toward his car, but he notices a familiar face, Lockheart, the mage killer who he saw in the newspaper. Lockhart says that he didn't expect Dekilling to know about him and asks how an arrogant and conceited mage like Dekilling could say his name. Lockhart was a villain available for all those who chose the mage class, and the reason he was able to become a natural enemy of mages was because of his skill to nullify all magic. When Lockhart charges at Dekilling, Dekilling quickly tries to find out Lockhart's limits. He tries magic, which was nullified as expected. Then he uses physical-type magic, and even that gets nullified. Lockhart laughs at Dekilling, calling him a stupid mage and saying that Dekilling didn't know anything. Lockhart swipes his dagger at Dekilling, but Dekilling dodges, not once but many times. Most mages would start panicking as soon as they saw their magic not working, but that wasn't the case for Dekilling. As Lockhart jumps at Dekilling, he receives a knuckle sandwich straight to the face and falls onto his ass. Dekilling explains that it's meaningless even if he doesn't have any magic. Lockhart curses at Dekilling while Dekilling stomps on Lockhart's face. A few days ago, he had created another magic circle on his body, which had increased his mana quality and his efficiency at mana manipulation. He tried to continue his routine after that. As soon as he tried to do pull-ups, the bar squeezed under his grip, leaving only the dent behind. Lockhart gains consciousness a few seconds later and immediately starts cursing at Dekilling. He says that all mages were frauds who couldn't do anything without magic. Dekilling asks if Lockhart was from the Red Film race. Lockhart, shocked, asks how Dekilling knows that. They are now more famously known as the Blood Shroud race, because they are born covered in a blood-red shroud of film. Their bloodline was known to be descended from the demons of past ages. Because of their lineage, they were forced to live while hiding their identities. They were opposite beings to the mages, since magecraft was created in order to fight demons. That conflict between the mages and the Blood Shroud race was a central element in the storyline. And the Blood Shrouds had their lives endangered simply because of their ancestry. Dekilling knows that their race was being hunted even at this very moment. Dekilling says that what Lockhart has to go through is truly shameful, but still, that was no reason to kill innocent mages. Lockhart snaps and asks Dekilling to stop spouting nonsense and to finish him already. Dekilling says that he knows the Blood Shroud race is innocent. Lockhart asks what a mere mage like him was saying. Dekilling says that he was a Eucaline, from a family line of honorable nobles who have not lost their dignity. Lockhart asks if Dekilling was trying to act pretentious before killing him. Dekilling cuts him off and tells Lockhart that the only time Dekilling lost his cool was when a demon was in front of him. He tells Lockhart that the Eucaline bloodline was known for hunting demons since ancient times. It was like an instinct to them when they could not overcome. But Dekilling didn't lose his cool in front of Lockhart. He asks Lockhart if he wavered at Lockhart's provocation or if he went berserk. He tells Lockhart that Lockhart is a human. Dekilling says that Lockhart can trust him. Just then, a few people run over to Dekilling and Lockhart. Dekilling quickly kicks Lockhart in the face, knocking him out. Inspector Ropa salutes Dekilling and then asks if he should kick Lockhart some more in Dekilling's stead. Dekilling says that there's no need and uses his magic to craft a steel wire. Dekilling tells Ropa that his handcuffs won't work on Lockhart and asks Ropa to tie him up with the steel wire instead. He then asks how Ropa found him. Ropa says that he came after receiving a report and asks if Dekilling wasn't the one who made it. Dekilling leaves after thanking the officer for taking over. Next day at Dekilling's training room, he receives the invite for the Burke meeting. Dekilling asks if his sister came all this way by herself just to hand him the letter, and his sister says that she had no choice since he had no interest, and that it was her role as the reciting head to take care of the family. The meeting was regarding the recent incident where the demon appeared in the mountains. He reads that he has to be there in a week with one guard. His sister asks if Dekilling was taking Jeff with him. Dekilling says that Jeff isn't good at anything other than driving. His sister says that he can't just go without a guard since the journey to Burke is where one's life is not guaranteed. Dekilling asks if his sister was worrying about him, and she starts panicking while refusing to admit that she was. After calming herself down a little, she asks him to leave the guard issued to her since she was going to commission one from a trustworthy place. At the Order of Freheim's training area, Julie asks the knights to focus while training. The captain was looking at her from far away. He asks himself what he was meant to do. Varen appears behind him and asks what the captain meant by that. The captain gets scared and asks Varen to at least make a little sound while moving. He then explains that they received a big commission, but it was a little bit of a bother, so he wasn't sure if he should accept it or not. Varen asks the captain to share the news with Julie and then decide together. The captain says that bringing it up to her was the bigger problem, since it was a commission to guard Dekilling. Varen clenches his fists while the captain explains, and then asks the captain to accept the commission. He says that since the mission was to guard a whole train that Dekilling was traveling in, not just anyone could do it, and says that the Order's fame would increase if they succeeded in the mission. The captain says that the vice-captain, Julie, and Dekilling weren't on the best of terms. Varen stops him and says that the vice-captain is not someone who would insert her personal emotions into a mission. The captain agrees and goes to mention the mission to Julie. Varen's killing intent intensifies. Burke is the name of the alpine region in the northern part of the continent, at an altitude of about 3,500 meters. It was also the dwelling of mages known as the Elders. It was where the schools of sorcery across the continent submitted their ideas, but the decisions made in Burke were to be followed even by the royal mages. It exerted an immense amount of influence. And because the summoning assembly occurs rarely, only once every several decades, to a mage, attending the Burke summoning assembly was both an honor and recognition of their status as a sorcerer of renown. Yet the summoning was also called a mage's grave. At the train station, Julie asks the captain if he made thorough preparations, and he assures her that he has. Varen says that Deculin is coming. Deculin walks up to the train with Alan. Julie greets him and says that starting from this point, their order will be in charge of guarding the train. She was completely flustered while saying that. She remembered the promise they made during the dinner. She wondered how she was supposed to smile, a wide grin or just a slight one. While she was thinking about that, the captain thought that she was acting weird since she utterly loathed Deculin and was doing her utmost to do her duty. The captain tries to say that he will do the talking, but Varen announces his name from behind both of them, saying that he was the one tasked with guard duty this time. The captain also says that Varen was a skilled man recognized by the whole order. Deculin, suspicious, tries to find out for himself, but he doesn't sense anything special from Varen. After that, Julie wishes them a safe trip before walking away, but then she suddenly turns around and gives Deculin a weird smile. Deculin smiles back, scared. Several hours later, while on the train, Deculin says that Alan can take a nap if he wants, and Alan quickly agrees to it. While Alan slept, Deculin was still on guard, because anything could happen during the journey to Burke. Unexpected events would occur every time there was a Burke summoning. Notably, the train attack was the one which was hardest to clear while being Deculin. The game would randomly choose a safe train to get to the meeting, and if you wished to take the safest option, you could buy information on which trains would be attacked through underground connections. Originally, Deculin would have done so, but it wasn't possible here since Woojin cut off all such underground connections as soon as he possessed Deculin. Since that option was gone, Deculin took some other measures to ensure his safety. Deculin notices that Alan was sure as hell sleeping soundly after causing so much fuss about how excited he was about the trip. When Alan was given the news, he started crying about how unworthy he was to be Deculin's assistant. The train stops at another station without any problem. All the other passengers had gotten off, only one remained. This was the last station before the destination. He thinks that all the preparations he made were for nothing, since nothing happened. He had bought high-defense clothes and used his Midas touch on them to increase the defenses further. He had also hardened his wood steel shurikens and even gave Alan one of the high-defense robes. After using his skill so much, his mana was almost out. He thought that it was a total waste. He sighs and hopes that the rest of the trip also goes without trouble. But as soon as the train passes over a bridge, the bridge explodes. A few days before Deculin left, Sylvia's father asks why she was glued to her book even on the train, and if it was an assignment from the university. She says that along with the assignment, she had also missed a few classes. The dad is proud that she works hard, even though she was already confirmed to be an archmage. She asks if she was truly worthy of becoming an archmage if she didn't even try this much. She was sad that she was going to miss Deculin's classes. She asks her father why they were going to the Burke assembly so early, even though they could have gone a few days later. Her father sighs and asks if she had heard about how the trips to Burke were called a mage's graveyard. She says that she thought that was just a ghost story. He tells her that it's not. Whenever there was a summon from Burke, a few mages always died. 15 years ago, 11 of them had died. For generations, getting a summon from Burke was a sign of prestige for the family. If one was chosen among the 20 families to attend, their family name would be engraved in history. However, if the families who were summoned cannot attend the assembly, they are permanently removed from the register, and a new family will fill the empty space. He asks what she thought the families who aren't yet in the registry would do to get a chance for their family. She answers the question herself and says that they would aim for the lives of the existing ones. He tells her that the reason they were rushing the trip was because he had intel that a group was scheming to attack all the later trains, and since he was with her, she had to be extra careful. However, if others found out, they would definitely be in trouble. Looking at her surprised face after learning all this, he tells her that death on the way to the assembly was basically considered a natural death. Back in the future, when the train Deculin was on goes over the bridge explodes. Deculin immediately springs into action. The whole train glows blue, and Alan wakes from his sleep and notices a huge hole in the train. The entire train was floating midair. Deculin was glad he managed to lift the whole train in time. The attackers say that this is absurd and ask if all professors are just built different. Their leader reminds them that they will be rewarded handsomely if they succeed and tells them to get to work. They start jumping into the train car Dekylin was in. Dekylin calls them morons. His wood-steel shurikens immediately fly toward the intruders and finish them all off quickly. Alan starts shouting that there was an attack. Dekylin knocks him out quickly and asks Varen to quickly take Alan and the other passengers to safety. Varen jumps off the train with Alan. After Varen leaves, Dekylin turns to the two intruders who survived, saying that they should know their deaths would also be considered natural causes. Varen takes his time saving the people, intentionally. Dekylin finishes dealing with the intruders and is completely exhausted after using so much mana to lift the train and then to fight. Varen conveniently arrives after the fight ends. He informs Dekylin that he moved all the passengers to a safe place. Dekylin says that Varen did a good job, but before he could say that they themselves should leave, he notices a shift in Varen's mood. He thought it might have been because of the attack, but then he notices the death variable coming from Varen. He wonders how Varen hid it so well from the beginning. Varen pulls out his sword and says that he was glad Dekylin survived, since now he can end Dekylin with his own hands. Dekylin asks if Julie was the one who ordered Varen to do this. Varen shouts at him, telling Dekylin not to utter his master's name. He declares that Dekylin will die by his hand for his master. Dekylin thinks that Varen is acting on his own, but he remembers how the captain had said that Varen was one of the best knights they had. Fighting him with almost no mana was suicide. Varen announces that his guard duty is over while lunging at Dekylin. Dekylin blocks with a wood-steel shuriken. Thinking of the only way to survive, he immediately cancels his telekinesis on the train, and it falls. At Birch, Sylvia's guard knight tries to cheer her up by bringing her some ice cream. She says she doesn't want any and asks if all the participants of the assembly have arrived. The knight replies that, aside from Dekylin and Ilhelm, everyone has arrived. He then asks if she's waiting for someone. She says she isn't, and the knight leaves her alone. She quietly utters Dekylin's name under her breath. She says she didn't mean to see this, but on the day she had gone to the graveyard to see her mother. Like any other day, she had been complaining to her mother about how Dekylin always gave her so many assignments. Suddenly, she heard a car pull up at the graveyard and quickly hid behind the trees. To her surprise, it was Dekylin. Even though she only saw his slouched back, she could feel his noble posture. It was unmistakably him at first glance. She wondered why he was there. She had thought he was incapable of mourning anyone, but when he turned to leave, she noticed tears in his eyes. The man who was always cold and haughty was shedding tears. She was fascinated. She had always thought of him as an annoying professor who acted high and mighty, but even he had memories of losing someone. His tears were like shooting stars to her, burning themselves into her memory. When her father told her about the attacks planned on the later trains, it bothered her. She remembered his lectures and used a mana stone as a medium to try something. After hours of effort, she managed to create a magical pigeon. She named it Swift and sent it flying, asking it to show her what it saw. Meanwhile, back at the train, Dekylin stands back up after the impact. The train had hung onto a mountain and hadn't fallen yet. Dekylin had a few broken bones, but they would heal soon. Just then he feels the death variable again. Varen dashes at him, still unharmed. Dekylin tries to shoot one of his shurikens, but it deflects off Varen's body. Varen calls Dekylin persistent before attacking again. He was undoubtedly stronger than Dekylin, even if Dekylin had been at full power. But Dekylin's personality would never allow him to bend, even if completely outmatched. He blocks another thrust from Varen, but this time Varen pierces through the wood-steel defense. Dekylin knows he's in trouble. With Varen's sword just inches away, he wonders what will happen once he dies. Will it be game over? Will he just return to his office like nothing happened? But before the sword hits him, the space inside the train cart begins to waver. Varen suddenly feels a sharp pain in his wrist. His hand flies off, cleanly severed. He screams in pain. Dekylin doesn't understand what just happened, but quickly uses the little mana he has to shoot a shuriken at Varen's foot. Varen loses balance and tumbles toward the opening in the cart. Before he falls off, he grabs his knife and drives it into the train floor, barely saving himself. Dekylin walks up to him. Varen, confused, asks what Dekylin just did. Dekylin says he doesn't know either, and asks the more important question. Why was Varen trying to kill him, even though he'd never done anything to him? Varen asks if Dekylin forgot all the evil deeds he committed against his master. Dekylin asks what Julie is to Varen for him to go this far. Varen says Dekylin would never understand. Back when he was a kid, he had gotten into trouble with a noble, and Julie was the knight assigned to handle the case. He said he was innocent, that the noble kid started the conflict. The noble's mother sided with her son, claiming her child would never do something like that. while her son laughed behind her. Julie stayed silent during the exchange. The lady accused Varen of hitting her son and trespassing on their property. Julie asked if he truly trespassed, and the lady confirmed. Julie looked at the gates and wondered how a scrawny kid like Varen had managed to climb such a high fence. Julie offered to take him to the police herself, and the lady agreed. While walking back, Varen said he was just defending himself, and there was no need to go to the police. Eventually, Julie told him she knew the Frisia household was infamous for their behavior, and that what he said might be partly true. He said it wasn't partly, it was completely true. She stopped him and said that he was still wrong for hitting someone. She grabbed his shoulders and told him that she would teach him how to control himself if he wanted to follow her. Varen was surprised by the offer. He asked if she'd also give him something to eat. After that, he became part of the Knight's Order. But because of his past and personality, he was unable to get along with others. The only person who cared for him was Julie. Whenever she asked if he was all right, he'd always say yes, and it truly was, as long as he could be with her. She was always in front of him, always helping, never compromising with injustice. His admiration and respect for her grew, and so did his love. He knew his feelings would only get in her way, that his emotions were nothing more than a burden. But still, he had to kill de Kulin before he brought destruction to Julie. De Kulin listens, and then says that Varen is wrong. Wujin says he will change what de Kulin had done. He extends his hand and asks Varen to hold on, that he would never harm Julie. Varen looks down for a second, but then de Kulin feels the death variable creeping toward him again. He steps back, realizing Varen doesn't intend to change his mind. Varen coldly says he will never change his mind. De Kulin calls him a fool, that his foolish decision will torment his master for the rest of her life. At that moment, Julie suddenly feels something strange. The captain asks if she's okay, and she says she is. He asks if she's worried about Varen again, and reassures her that Varen can take care of himself. Julie agrees. Meanwhile, as Varen falls to his death, he hopes that Julie will be happy. Outside, a magical pigeon flew over the train, and through its eyes, Sylvia had seen everything, how de Kulin had killed his guard in self-defense. Her knight informed her that the assembly was starting soon. While following the knight, she hoped that de Kulin would make it to the assembly in time. At the accident site, Vice Chief Lilia investigated the scene. When she asked about the accident, the workers told her that such incidents were a common occurrence whenever the Burke summoning assembly was held. She then asked if there were any casualties, and they said that no one was injured, but 2 people were missing, a guard named Varen and Professor de Kulin. They pointed out the rest of the survivors and asked her to speak to them. When she talked to the survivors, they told her they were saved by a knight while the train was midair. When she asked what they meant by midair, the survivors pulled out a photo of the train floating above the ground. She asked if he had raised the entire train with magic and called it absurd. Just then, someone telepathically told her that the knight was dead and that he had tried to kill de Kulin but ultimately failed. She looked around to see who it was but couldn't find anyone. At that moment, the survivors pointed at someone walking toward them. It was de Kulin. The whole encounter with Varen had been too close. If it weren't for the person who had cut off Varen's hand, it would have been de Kulin at the bottom of that cliff instead of a nameless knight who wasn't even in the game. He wondered who it could have been that helped him. Just then, Lilia approached him and said she had a few questions regarding the incident. De Kulin looked at her and asked for the time. He had 6 hours left to get to the assembly. She again tried to question him, but he cut her off and asked if the train he was on was the only way to Burke. Annoyed, she still answered, saying there were road paths and sea routes. She tried again to question him, but he was already gone. She turned back to the workers and asked if de Kulin had just been there. They said he might have used acceleration magic. She wondered how he had so much mana to stop a train from falling, then fight off assassins, then duel a knight, and now use high-level acceleration magic. She began to wonder if this was why Lockhart had warned her about de Kulin. All the families gathered in the Burke assembly. While the others were talking among themselves, Sylvia's father said it was almost time for the stars to align and for the meeting to begin. Sylvia kept stealing glances at de Kulin's seat, hoping he would make it. High Elder, seated above, expressed humble gratitude to those who had responded to the summons. His mana was so incredibly strong that even just hearing him speak made Sylvia uneasy. High Elder Dezekton was one of the strongest candidates for becoming the next Archmage. In other words, she had to be at least as powerful as him if she hoped to challenge for the position. High Elder said the meeting would begin after he called attendance. If an attending house did not respond after being called 3 times, they would be considered absent. Sylvia's father answered the call, followed by a lady from the Bran household, a man from the Viored family, and Ihelm from the Rewind family. Then came the name of Deculin from the Euclan family, still absent. The High Elder called his name again. The nobles around murmured that it would be a major event if the Euclan family was eliminated from the registry, especially since they were the first household ever summoned. Others laughed and said it was expected, as the current head, Deculin, was lacking compared to his ancestors. They mocked and made fun of him. Sylvia called them pathetic in her head. For some reason, it bothered her when they badmouthed Deculin. The High Elder called his name for the final time, and then the door behind Sylvia opened. She twisted around to look. Deculin walked in through the door, calmly dusting the snow off his shoulder and fixing his hair before announcing his presence to the High Elder. After the attendance, the meeting progressed rapidly. First, the matter discussed was regarding the demon who appeared in the Black Mountain. The acting head of the Barn family, Ethensel, proposed that each school give orders or cooperate with the church and dispatch holy mages to suspicious regions. No family went against her proposition, so the matter finished quickly. A mysterious person announced that there would be a short break. Deculin sighed a breath of relief. He had to run like crazy for 6 hours to make it in time. He had no stamina or mana left now. Even though he arrived beaten up and tired, no one questioned him because of how Deculin looked naturally. Just as he was about to step outside, someone called out from behind. It was Alan, with tears in his eyes. He asked if Deculin was all right and apologized for being late since he wasn't allowed inside once the meeting had started. Deculin couldn't look at Alan as just an innocent child anymore. He would definitely know that Deculin was not Deculin anymore. Woojin thought back to a quote he heard in a movie back on Earth and asked Alan to stand next to Deculin from then on. He remembered the quote, "Keep your friends close and enemies closer." He decided to keep an eye on Alan, to know exactly where he stood. After the break ended, the next topic the High Elder brought up was about the Bloodshroud sorcerers who had appeared. This was a more sensitive topic and wouldn't end as easily as the previous one. A man slammed the table for attention and said that the Bloodshrouds were like cockroaches, breeding secretly by laying eggs within human society. Ethensel asked what evidence he had to support such claims, as there were no means to differentiate Bloodshrouds. The man insisted that they must find a way to identify them so they could be eradicated. Ethensel told him to watch his words. Man went on to say that the Bloodshrouds were gathering and that he knew without a doubt they had a leader. Ethensel responded that it was just pure speculation. The man then turned to the others, asking if they didn't find it disgusting that Bloodshrouds were living among them, and the others nodded in agreement. He reminded them of the countless mages who had died because of the family's indecisiveness 60 years ago. He looked at Ethensel, who had no response. Sylvia's father asked Deculin what he thought about this matter, since the Euclines were the great exorcists who stood at the spearhead of demon eradication. Deculin knew very well what Sylvia's father was after. However, suppressing the Bloodshrouds was something Woojin could never do. Even if he couldn't stop them, he could at least delay them as much as possible. After all, the Bloodshrouds were the world's common enemy. Deculin spoke. He said that the Bloodshrouds used their enemies, but when reviewing all the literature, all conflicts with them stem from misunderstandings. An old man asked what Deculin meant. Deculin explained that 237 years ago, during the Rodran witch incident, the Rodrans were all convicted of being witches despite their innocence. From that incident, a great suppression followed, and many Bloodshrouds were killed. They retaliated, and the cycle of bloodshed continued. He added that the incident the man was referring to from 60 years ago was simply politics, as a mana stone mine had been discovered on Bloodshroud lands. The old man snapped, saying that a Euclid had taken the mine 60 years ago and killed the most Bloodshrouds, so Deculin shouldn't be saying anything. The man said he was certain the Bloodshrouds were born with demonic energy and that the Euclid family, who kill demons, should know this. Deculin corrected the old man, stating that his family's tradition was to hunt demons, not Bloodshrouds. The old man shouted that the Bloodshrouds are demons. Deculin turned cold and asked if the old man could take responsibility for his words. He told him not to declare humans as demons so nonchalantly, and warned that someone who does such a thing could, in turn, become the real demon. Furious, the old man walked out. Sylvia's father said it was a shame he had to be away from her until the next meeting. She reminded him that the meeting was just the next day. He even started crying as they parted ways. She then read the note given to her before she was assigned her room. She thought the words written in it were just meant to instill fear in young children and prepared to go to bed. Later that night, she woke from her sleep thirsty. As she walked toward the door, still half asleep, the room around her changed. She found herself in a corridor. She wondered what she did wrong and looked at the instruction note. It was written in the note that once a person lay down on the bed, they should refrain from waking up until the morning or risk finding themselves in a random place within the building. She thinks that this phenomenon didn't occur when she was staying in the second hall for the past 2 days. She wonders if it has something to do with the fact that she was nearer to the elders, making the mana more dense. She thought that it wouldn't affect her as long as she didn't leave her room. While she was trying to calm herself, she notices something behind her and takes off running. The instructions stated that she couldn't leave the floor, and if you encountered any open doors, you must not go in or you risk being locked inside that room. She knocks on a door, hoping for help, but the instructions state that if anyone knocks on your door, you are to ignore them and not make any sound. She goes through the hall begging for help. Tears start rolling down her cheeks, but then someone opens a door and asks if she was lost. It was Dekulin. He lets her in and she thanks him. Inside, she apologizes and explains how she suddenly ended up in the hallway when she got up from her bed. Dekulin explains that Burke is filled with many spirits who have lost their consciousness to magic, and says that Sylvia should have read the rules on the note properly. She notices that he always had that never-changing appearance and an unwavering gaze. She wonders whether it was because he was Dekulin that he was able to open the door. She notices a sound from the door. Dense mana leaks through the cracks. It was the ghost that had been chasing her. She panics again, but Dekulin asks her to stay still. His shurikens rush past her, slicing the ghost. She stares at the wood steel shurikens and asks how he was able to kill the roaming ghost so easily. Dekulin says that it was a simple type of magic meant for killing. Nothing to be proud of, as to him. Magic wasn't created for the purpose of killing. His words hit her deeply. She casts the flowing flame magic that he had taught in class. Dekulin says that she did it correctly. She continues with lightning, metallization, then goblin, and Dekulin just says that she did a good job. She pouts, saying he didn't even take a glance at her magic before saying it was correct. She deliberately does something half-heartedly to see his reaction. Dekulin still says she did a good job before pointing out that there was an instability in the air magic circle of the spell she just cast. She then asks what he thinks her weakness is. Dekulin says that it's for her to figure out. Sylvia says that's not fair since Dekulin told Ephraim her weakness. Dekulin assures her that Ephraim found her weakness herself. Sylvia doesn't look convinced, so Dekulin asks her to cease her impatience, as time was on her side. He says she would improve as long as she stayed dedicated like she was now. He asks her to take it a little slower, and take a step at a time instead of rushing to the end, since she was one of only 3 people in the world with such incredible talent. Those were words she had heard countless times growing up, but somehow it felt different coming from Dekulin. Later that night, while Sylvia slept, Dekulin notices something outside, an indication of immense wealth. He quickly goes out to investigate. He thought that it might be something immensely rare, as these mountains were not accessible under normal circumstances. While he walked, a ghost followed him and tried to scare him, but to its surprise, Dekulin totally ignored it. It tries over and over again, but it doesn't work. Then Dekulin suddenly stops. He looks straight at the ghost and asks if it saw anything possessing a lot of magic around the area. The ghost runs away crying. Dekulin wonders what was wrong with the ghost. A few minutes later, he finds what he was looking for. It was a purified mana tree. With a wand made from this, he could grow his power faster. It was quite the surprise, even for him. Next day of the assembly was no different from the last. Dekulin and Vethan, the old man, were going at each other about the blood shroud issue. The others were surprised that Dekulin was siding with the enemies, even though they thought he would be the one actively leading everyone to the enemy's location. Even Sylvia's father thought Dekulin was plotting something. Sylvia thought that all the others were also thinking the same as her father, but she knew they were all wrong. She knew that he was just stating the obvious. The High Elder stopped the debate, as the matter about the blood shroud was going nowhere. He decided to move that topic to the next meeting and talk about the other issues. Unlike the blood shroud issue, the other matters were decided on very quickly, and the meeting came to a close within a few days. The old man pushed past Dekulin intentionally while leaving. Even though Dekulin just did what was best for the questline, he had entangled himself with more people than he would have liked. The next day in the shopping district, while looking for materials for his wand, Alan noticed something and immediately called Dekulin. He said that the person outside was a hero to him, and that it was because of her he made it to Burke. Dekulin remembered her name, Lilia Fremian. They decided to treat her to a meal for helping Alan get to Burke safely. Lilia thanked Dekulin and also mentioned that the investigation had concluded, but she still wanted to know what happened to Varen. Dekulin said that he died during the ambush. The food arrived, and Lilia stared at Dekulin the whole time, wondering what exactly was different about him, just like Lockhart had told her. Back in the Imperium Security Bureau, Lilia explained that Lockheart was about to be sent to one of the most notorious prisons for killing innocent mages. She asked if he had anything to say for himself. Lockhart didn't say anything. Lilia said that Lockhart was just tight-lipped during interrogation. She told him to activate his power. Lockhart looked up confused, and she told him again to activate his power. Lockhart smiled and used his magic nullification powers. As soon as the magical monitoring devices shut off, Lilia slammed her hand on the desk and called Lockhart a dumb idiot for getting himself into trouble even after she had told him not to be rash and not to do things that would negatively affect the blood shrouds. She said that if him being a blood shroud was revealed, she would have had to kill him herself. Lockhart laughed and asked if leeching off the Empire would still be possible if she killed him. She said that there was no other way to be exposed unless they were seen immediately after birth. Lockhart reminded her that their powers were also demon-like and that people would always be scared of them. Lilia told him to shut up and said that mages were also born with the same, if not stronger, abilities. She then asked why he provoked Deculin of all people, as they were already keeping an eye on him. He asked if they were planning to kill Deculin. Lilia said they were just observing, unless he kept causing problems for them. Lockhart asked her not to kill Deculin. He said Deculin was a true noble and that there was no need to kill him. Lilia asked if Lockhart had finally lost it, after committing so many crimes, to spout nonsense like that. Lockhart believed that when Deculin affirmed that blood shrouds weren't demons but humans, his eyes showed no doubt, only righteousness, and that if there were more nobles like him, the blood shrouds would be living with everyone else. Lockhart said that Deculin didn't kill him even after knowing he was a blood shroud. Lilia asked if Lockhart had forgotten how the Euclid ancestors stood at the forefront of slaughtering and oppressing the blood shrouds. Lockhart said that by that logic, they would be agreeing that blood shrouds were demons just because they had a demon ancestry. Before leaving, she warned Lockhart to lay low, at least for now. Back at the restaurant, she wondered what Lockhart meant. As to her, Deculin still seemed like the same annoying guy. Just then, someone approached them, and Lilia had to cover her nose due to the unbearable stench of alcohol from the person. Deculin immediately told the man to leave, as he had nothing to talk about with them. It was Ilhelm. Ilhelm said that he had a lot to hear from Deculin. At the same time, back at the Order of Freyheim, Julie learned about Varen's fate, and she couldn't believe it. She told the captain to get ready, and that Deculin better have an explanation as soon as he returned. Lilia felt like she was caught in an awkward situation. Ilhelm said that Deculin really caught him off guard during the meeting, and that he couldn't wrap his head around Deculin's decision. He asked why Deculin was siding with the blood shrouds. Lilia couldn't believe it. Ilhelm said that Deculin was the one who wanted to annihilate them before, and that Deculin's paper condemning the blood shrouds was still in the university. He asked if Deculin perhaps found a blood shroud slave to conduct research for him. Alan told Ilhelm to stop insulting Deculin. Deculin asked Alan to calm down, saying Ilhelm's brain was akin to rotten cheese. It was obvious he'd say weird stuff. Ilhelm quickly changed the topic and said there were only 6 months left until the research presentation, and told Deculin to clean out his office before he left. After Ilhelm left, Lilia wondered why Deculin was siding with her race. She thought it was hard to believe and wondered if this was what Lockhart meant. The next day, before leaving Birch, Deculin commissioned one of the best craftsmen to make a wand for him. After that, on the train back to the Empire, unfortunately, they were in the same carriage as the old man Vethin, who didn't bother hiding his hostility, but no conflicts actually occurred throughout the ride. The long trip had finally come to an end. After getting off the train, Alan said there was one more train transfer left, but Deculin wasn't listening to him. Julie and her knights were standing in front of him. Julie stayed silent for a while, then said that she had heard about the ambush and that she was glad Deculin was safe. Deculin thanked her. Judging by how her knights were acting, they didn't seem too happy that Deculin was the one who survived. Julie said that she read in the news that Varen and Deculin worked together to save the victims. She said she had to ask Deculin something. She asked how Varen was. Deculin didn't answer her. While she waited for an answer, he thought about how he wanted to tell her everything, that Varen tried to kill him, and that things ended this way after they fought each other. But now that he was standing in front of her, he couldn't bring himself to say anything. He wondered if he should tell her the truth, or if the truth was too cruel for Julie. Even though she acted tough, her heart wasn't as ironclad as she made it seem. If she heard the truth, she would certainly blame herself. She would say that her subordinate's wrongdoing was hers and would severely torment herself. He thought it was the right thing to do to not tell her, even if it meant receiving ire from the others. The train conductor announced that the train would be departing, and people started rushing toward the train. Deculin said that it was difficult to say, and that Varen was too emotional. Julie thanked Deculin and then said they would go see him now. As they walked away, Wujin thought that he was laughably the same as Varen. He couldn't get a grip on the feelings that Deculin had. Alan said that the knights were very rude. Just then someone asked why Deculin held himself back. It was Sylvia, who was angry that he didn't say the truth. Of course, Deculin didn't know what she meant. She gave him a book as a gift before running away. Alan asked what the book was, and Dekillian said he didn't know himself. He sighed and asked Alan to make haste and return home quickly. Inspector shows how the whole attack on the train happened, including when the train was hanging off the cliff and when Varen fell off. He summarizes that both Dekillian and Varen tried their best to take control of the situation, but Varen fell during the ambush. Julie thanks the inspector, though she still looks very sad. As she walks away, the other knights ask if there were any keepsakes they could keep, or if the inspector knows who was behind the ambush. The inspector says there were no keepsakes and explains that it's an unwritten rule that inspectors aren't allowed to investigate crimes that occur on the way to Burke. Julie walks up to a cliff and says she lost her reliable right arm. To think he left the world in vain, she calls him foolish. Back at Dekillian's mansion, the building trembles as Uriel finds out that Dekillian wrote another family check. The butler tries to calm her down. She shouts at him, asking if he forgot what she said about the family finances, and warns that they won't even last 2 more months without going bankrupt. The check she's referring to was the cost of commissioning the wand. But since the family finances were this low, Dekillian decides to take action. He tells Uriel to calm down, saying he has ways to secure more funds. He goes to the room containing all the items he bought from the auction. Uriel asks what he's planning to do and accuses him of flaunting his wealth. Dekillian tells her to hold on and to speak more ladylike since she's the next head of the family. Uriel gets angrier. At first, Dekillian had thought those items were just good investments, but when preparing for his trip to Burke, he realized something, to further increase their value by using his Midas touch. Uriel gets impatient and asks what her moron brother is doing. The butler tries to stop her from using bad language. After finishing, Dekillian says he's going to put all these items up for auction again. Uriel asks if he's dumb for selling them right after buying them. She says they won't rise in value unless he holds on to them for a long time. Dekillian tells her to be quiet, but she insists that he can't just tell her to shut up while throwing away money. Dekillian looks at Butler Roy and tells him to call an appraiser and transport these items quickly. As Roy leaves, Dekillian looks back at the vase he bought. After using Midas touch on it, it's revealed that any flower kept in the vase will never wilt and will slowly turn into a magical flower, with each petal having a different effect. He thinks the vase might be something he should keep for himself. While the items are being moved, Uriel comes up to him again and asks if he's really hellbent on making them go bankrupt. Dekillian assures her that he'll make money and asks her not to worry. She tells him to stop saying that. Before she can push further, he says he has to go to work and leaves. At the university, Ephraim and her friends have created the Ordinary Magic Exploration Club, and they're playing cards in the clubroom. A full house with kings, Ephraim says while revealing her cards. The others say it's the 3rd time she's won in a row. Ephraim exempts herself from cleaning duty for the week after winning. While they're having fun, Ephraim feels as if this is all a dream. Even though she comes from a barren family, she never went to an academy, and ever since she entered the university, she was constantly hated by others, not just students, but also teachers. There were many incidents. To think she could go from that to now having a club with friends. Ephraim tells the others that she's really enjoying her time in the club. Just then, the door slides open, and a man loudly calls them ignorant kids. He shouts at them, asking what they're doing. Professor Beck, in the back, tells Professor Relin that commoners are taking up university space to do pointless things. These 2 professors have to make an issue out of everything concerning commoners. Relin looks at the club name and calls it ridiculous. He again asks what they were doing. Ephraim explains that they submitted the club creation plan and were granted permission to become an official club. Relin calls it preposterous and asks who allowed such a stupid club to be formed. He then recognizes Ephraim, who had been in trouble with Sylvia, and calls her a low-life troublemaker. Ephraim's eyes turn cold as she glares at him. Relin calls her arrogant for glaring at an esteemed professor. Ephraim's friend tries to calm her down before she gets into more trouble. Professor Beck just laughs at them. Relin says that if she's so confident, then tell him who gave permission, because according to him, no professor would allow such a thing. Ephraim notices another person behind Relin and looks surprised. Relin assumes she's speechless because she has no comeback and keeps pushing her. Just then from behind him, Dekillian says that it was him, the one who allowed them to make the club, and asks if Relin has any complaints.